What is the difference between the concept of demons in Christianity and the Indian tradition? In the Christian tradition, all these creatures are servants of Satan, and their main task is to corrupt the soul of a person in order to lead him astray and lead him to hell. And in India, what is the task of demons? What goals do they pursue? I will say right away that the application of the word demons to Indian material is conditional. This often happens when representatives of one culture use a term familiar to them to describe the realities of another culture, which is very different. Let's turn to the origins of the word demon. It came to us from ancient Greece, from antiquity, and the ancient Greeks called demons special and supernatural entities that were intermediate between gods and people. They could be both good and evil. And already in the Christian period, demons received a clear definition. They are hostile to God, hostile to angels who harm people and lead them astray. And in this regard, all pagan deities, the same Indian deities, from the point of view of Christianity, are also demons. That is how they were perceived in Europe, in principle. When Europeans became acquainted with Indian culture, then in the context of India, they began to call demons the most diverse categories of creatures, even those not very closely related to each other. In this regard, two large mega-categories can be distinguished: demons hostile to gods, or Asuras, and demons hostile to people, that is, all other infernal entities. The first category is demons hostile to gods, or Asuras. This word is usually translated as demons, including in scientific literature. Asuras are not hostile to people at all. And in the Vedas, Asuras were not antagonists of gods. It is customary for us to translate the word devas as gods and Asuras as demons. But this is very conditional. In fact, Asuras are actually a different clan of gods. And even in the Vedas, gods are called Asuras, for example, Varuna, the god of world waters, and Agni, the god of fire. Asuras here act as the closest relatives of devas. Asuras have a physical body, that is, they are not some kind of disembodied evil spirits. They are depicted as beautiful creatures living in the underworlds. There is a well-known myth that the gods, together with the Asuras, rock the ocean, and the gods get the treasures that come out of it, but the Asuras do not. The question arises, why were the Asuras appointed to the role of bad guys who are to blame for everything? After all, in essence, there are no fundamental differences between the gods and the Asuras. Among the Asuras, there are many positive characters. For example, the son of Hiranyakashipu, Prahlada, who worships Vishnu, or Sharmitsha, who becomes one of the wives of King Yayati and gives birth to 3 sons who became the ancestors of the human races known on Earth. That is, the Asuras can even intermarry with people. At the same time, the Devas gods often commit bad, unseemly acts. Let us recall how Indra seduces other people's wives. Brihaspati takes his wife from his younger brother, and Soma kidnaps and seduces Brihaspati's wife. I will also remind you that in Iranian mythology there are also Devas and Asuras, who are called Ahura there. And at the same time, the Devas are given the role of more negative characters, and the Ahuras are positive. In Indian mythology, it turned out the other way around. Why such a division occurred is a mystery. It is the Asuras who are never particularly hostile to people and do not threaten them in any way. In the first chapter of the sacred text Devi Mahatmya, the great goddess Mahadevi is also called the Great Asurian or Mahasuri. In the same text, it is said that the Asuras can reach the heavenly worlds. According to another version, the Asuras go to Varuna's paradise, which is in the west, and people go to Indra's paradise, which is in the east. In Indian mythology, it is usually imagined that the Asuras wage an endless war with the gods. Sometimes they win, but temporarily, and then in the end, the gods still defeat them, and the Asuras are forced to go to their underground worlds. But in these worlds, they are by no means poor. These worlds are depicted as zones of increased comfort, where there are beautiful girls and countless riches. So the Asuras are not some evil monsters to be feared. And yet, people do not worship the Asuras in the same way as they worship the gods. This is where they differ. The Asuras can act on a cosmic level and can even overcome the gods, except for the greatest ones, like Shiva or Brahma. Sometimes they even temporarily seize power over the universe. As for the other large category of demons in India, those that harm people, this category is very diverse. And the difference between these types of creatures and Christian demons is that their only purpose is to simply cause minor harm to people. For example, to send diseases, madness, cause cattle to die, and so on. These Indian demons do not pursue the goal of fighting for a person's soul in order to lead him away from the true faith. They have simpler and more mundane tasks. Accordingly, the methods of fighting them are also more mundane. As for the demons that fight people and harm them, this is a whole series of large categories. They often intersect, and it is often difficult to distinguish between them. The most famous categories of demons enemies of people in Hinduism are Rakshasas, Pishachas, Bhutas, Pretas, Yatuthanas, Vetalas, Grahas. This list is not complete because in India, in different places, some local evil spirits are called that harm people. All of the listed categories of creatures have common features. Firstly, this is their original appearance. It is very disgusting and terrifying. It is unpleasant to look at them. These creatures can be invisible or change their appearance at will. For example, Bhutas are often represented as flickering lights or clouds, and to reveal them, you need to set fire to turmeric and shine a light on them. If these clouds do not cast a shadow, then these will be Bhutas, and appropriate measures must be taken. The third feature is that all these creatures are associated with the night. That is, they are most dangerous at night. For example, Rakshasas are also called Nishachara, that is, wandering at night. Their functions are always associated with some kind of destructive activity. They can engage in vampirism, cannibalism, corpse eating, are associated with the dead, with cremation sites, with battlefields. That is, such negativity is their sphere. Of course, there are differences here. For example, Rakshasas usually prefer to eat the flesh of living people, and Pishachas can also feast on the dead. Pretas are also associated with the dead, and they are often not very expressive and mix with Bhutas. But in Buddhism, Pretas form a special class of creatures, hungry ghosts that inhabit a special world. They have a very narrow throat the size of a needle, and their stomach is the size of a mountain, and therefore, they cannot get enough. According to Buddhist beliefs, Pretas are people who were greedy and envious during their life on earth. This is a feature of Buddhist demonology. As for the question of the power of these creatures, I would put Rakshasas in first place. By the way, Rakshasas can threaten not only people, they can even challenge the gods. Rakshasas can organize themselves and create such huge states as, for example, the kingdom of Ravana in Sri Lanka. That is, they can have civilized states with developed urban life, their own architecture, economy. Rakshasas can also be virtuous. Ravana had a younger brother, Vibhishana, who was distinguished by his wisdom and dissuaded Ravana from the war with Rama, advised him to return Sita. All other creatures, Bhutas, Pishachas, Pretas, Vetalas, are small spirits that do not form any organization of their own. They simply harm people to the best of their ability, each on their own. Sometimes they can act as part of Shiva's retinue, but in practice they are more often described as local spirits that must be avoided. Vetalas, for example, are evil spirits that can inhabit the dead and act like living beings. Yatuthans are werewolf spirits, and they are associated more with Rakshasas, while Pretas are associated with the world of the dead and the dead. But in general, if you compare Rakshasas and all other creatures hostile to people, it is like comparing organized bandits with some street hooligans. Rakshasas stand out sharply against the background of other demons hostile to humans and are close to Asuras in their power, while all the rest are engaged in petty sabotage and harm people to the best of their ability. and Christianity has an extremely negative attitude towards contact with demons and working with them. At the same time, it is known that many Hindu and Buddhist yogis often subjugated demons and used them for their own purposes. It turns out that in the tradition of Hinduism and Buddhism, interaction with demonic forces can serve good purposes. But the fact is that in Hinduism there is no such complete antagonism between good and evil as in Christianity. In principle, everything that we see is a manifestation of a single divine principle. It can be high or low, sacred or not, but there is nothing absolutely evil and bad in Hinduism. In Christianity, demonic possession can also lead to some physical and mental disorders, but it can also lead to apostasy, to some religious violations. But in the Indian environment, this is not associated with any apostasy. It is simply everyday harm to a person. And as for contacts with demons and their use, here we can recall the famous Buddhist legend about the origin of the Tibetan people. It says that when a male monkey, in whose guise the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara himself was embodied, united in love with a mountain demoness or mountain witch, the entire Tibetan people came from their union. According to legend, these people inherited red faces, anger, and love for meat from their mother. There are also female demonic entities. Yoginis, yakshinis, and dakinis can be called demonic. They can be formidable and dangerous, but they are not completely harmful entities, which distinguishes them from bhutas, pretas, rakshasas, and others. Yoginis are supernatural female entities that make up a special group of 64 yoginis. They, like other groups of creatures, can act as a retinue of large female deities, or they can act independently. The main group of female demons are yakshinis. In essence, they are nature spirits associated with trees, the riches of wild nature and the fruitful power of the earth. Yakshas and yakshinis are depicted with very curvy figures, full of vitality. Their sculptures have large facial features, round, heavy breasts, thin waists, and wide hips. They are decorated with bracelets and necklaces. That is, in Yakshini we see precisely the manifestation of life-affirming energy. Yakshini are not completely demonic creatures. They have traits that Christians would call demonic, but they are not initially 100% evil, like some pretas or bhutas. By the way, mortal earthly men can enter into love relationships with female demons, and such relationships can even be beneficial to both of them. That is, rakshasas can be positive. Yes, in the Christian tradition there is a clear division between good and evil. There is Jesus Christ, and there is Satan. But the distinctive feature of Hindu culture is that there is no analog of Satan in it. All Hindu deities can combine both good and evil to the same degree. Hindus believe that God manifests himself in various forms. A person can worship the form of God that is closest to him while respecting other forms of worship. An important doctrine of Hinduism is the belief in reincarnation and transmigration of the soul, or samsara. Hinduism recognizes the soul as eternal. After the death of the body, the soul is born in a new body, which can be either a human, an animal, or another incarnation. Unfortunately, Hindus do not believe in Jesus Christ and his salvation. Therefore, they do not divide God's plan into good and evil. But we have no right to judge them. Only God has the right to do so.